a widget repository, which presumably it implements all the CRUD operations. That's why I notice that it's extending an interface that presumably implements all the CRUD operations to create, read, update widgets in here. Yes. Let's start using it. So now the way we want to use it, is from where? From our React application. Yes, we want to be able to send RESTful services, right, URL queries into our running Java server, and then translate those HTTP requests into access from the repository. Yes, so let's do that. I believe we already have a service. Okay, we already have a widget controller. There we have, right? We have a widget controller. Now our widget controller was retrieving data from this static list of widgets. Yes, right. We want to we want to move away from this. Instead of returning this static list of widgets, instead what we want to do is retrieve whatever is in the database. Yes, all right. So let's do that. So in the widget controller, we're going to use the CRUD repository we just created. It's called what was it called? Widget repository. There it is, and we'll call it repository. Okay. Now, how are we going to get a hold of an instance for this repository? There are a couple ways, but the easiest way is to ask the framework, the Java framework, to instantiate it for us at runtime, right when the server boots up. Create an instance and somehow inject it in here, and magically give us an instance of the repository here, right? This is a common design pattern called inversion of control, right? Where you ask the framework, right, to instantiate these things and then resolve the dependencies by injecting them into our source code. So in Java, the way you do that is by using the annotation auto-wired, right? Meaning, you do the magic, you instantiate it, pass me, and make sure that there's an instance of this repository bound to this particular variable, right? So we're not going to explicitly do new, right? We're not going to explicitly ask for an instance. The auto-wire will do that for us at runtime when the server boots up. Okay, all right. So once we have that, we can start looking at our implementations for create, for update, for delete, right? How about this one? Find all widgets. Well, the implementation we had was what? Was retrieving the array. That we have here, this static array, right? We don't want to do that anymore. Instead, we want to use the repository to go and fetch all the records in my database. Yes. So let's do that. So instead of retrieving this list of this array over here, I'm going to comment that out, and instead I'm going to return whatever the repository dot. Let's see what the repository gives us. If you're looking at the API of the repository, you'll notice that there's quite a few things in here, right? Quite a few useful functions, right? Notice look, there's a find all. I wonder what that does. There's a find all by ID. There is a delete all. There's a delete by ID. So here we have implementations of all the CRUD operations that we would, all the operations that we would possibly want. Right? There's find by ID. There's save. Save behaves both as an update and as an insert. Right? If it's a brand new object that you are saving, that it's not already in the database, it will be interpreted as an insert. If instead it's if you're saving an object that you had previously retrieved from the database, and JPA knows that this is an object that already exists, it's a record that already exists in the database, it will be an update. Okay, so save is a little bit schizophrenic. It can behave either as an insert or as an update. There's quite a few things that we can use here. In particular, we're going to be using this find all. So find all does what you would expect. It does a select star from widgets, right, retrieving all the records. It iterates over all those records. It instantiates instances of widget. It populates these instances, and it gives us an iterable, right? It gives us an iterable, right? Why an iterable? Well, the iterable allows us to do one thing, right, which is very, very important, is that in the database we might have thousands of records. Yes, we could have tens of thousands of records, If we would try to load all those records into memory, probably our server would crash. There would be no way that it could instantiate all those amounts of records all at once into memory. Yes, right? It's a database is for long-term storage, right? For storing huge amounts of data. A server can only ever possibly have a small snippet or a small window, right, into whatever in memory of whatever is actually in the database. Make sense? So what iterable allows us to do is to consume the data, one at a time, and also allows the infrastructure behind the scenes to maybe load 10 records at a time, and then as you consume from this iteration, right, when there's no more elements in the iterable, it'll go fetch 10 more, right? It'll cache them into memory and give you the possibility of consuming it in order. Make sense? Right, that's why it's iterable. But we're going to be lazy here, and instead we're going to cast this into a list, which is going to force the infrastructure to load all the instances. So I'm going to cast it into a list widget. This is going to force the underlying framework to load every single instance and create for me a list of objects already instantiated, all ready to go. Make sense? All right, so let's try it out. Let's try it out. Let's restart. Let's restart. I guess I could have run it from here. Yeah, let's do that. I can just run the server from here. All right, so it's recompiling, it's packaging everything, and we'll have the server up and running soon. Okay, started and then already listening at port 8080. So let's do that. Let's go to our favorite browser. And let's point our browser to localhost 8080. And the URL for that endpoint was what? I forget. I believe it was /API/widgets, right? So let's do that. So /API/widgets. All right, comes back as, all right, it didn't explode. It came back as an empty array, which is actually good, right? It's promising because it's actually correct, right? If we go back and we look at widgets and we do a select star on all of them, it comes back as empty. There are no widgets. Yes? All right, so let's create a couple widgets. All right, so we'll say, widget number 1, and this will be, I guess I don't need the ID, right? And the title will be widget 1. This would be maybe widget 2, widget 3. We'll do apply. And I won't give it the ID so that it'll auto-increment the ID. So let's apply, run it. Okay, so it created these records, these 3 records. There they are. If we go back here and refresh this, notice that indeed now we have those 3 records now available to an endpoint. You see that? Right? So yeah, so perfect. We do have now access to the data that is already stored in the database, right? So let's take a look at implementing yet one more interaction. For instance, being able to retrieve a unique identifier, or a unique ID by its unique primary key.